Okay, we're going to have a little reading today. We're going to read to 1965 Alcourt Sunfish Wave. We've got the book The Spray, written by R.D. Robert Daniel Pete Culler. It's about his building and sailing a replica of Joshua Slocum's famous vessel, which was named The Spray. Start with the preface. Pete says, "On first thought, it would seem of no value to me to write or you to read about my 23 years afloat as the builder and owner of a replica of Joshua Slocum's Spray, especially since the start of my life afloat was 48 years ago, 50. If you consider the 2 years spent planning and dreaming. On second thought, it must be of interest, for I constantly get letters inquiring about the vessel. Most of these letters writers are apparently considering leading the life I once led, or something as close to it as changing times will allow, and times have changed since the times I described. There is no doubt that Slocum's voyage, writings, and vessel, the Spray, have been the cause of much argument, learned works, and some disagreement. In this book, I do not join in the arguing. Rather, I describe what it was like to build and use my copy of Slocum's craft. The admirers of the Spray will look at her as they want to, the detractors the same. At this late date, it is all water under the keel for me, and also for my wife, who became a part of my life afloat. What people think is no matter to us. All we can do is assure you that it was pretty good water while we were in it. It seems there has always been a Spray replica being built somewhere in recent years. Very recently, there have been quite a few, of various materials and in various places. I often hear from the builders, the would-be builders, and those who are still just thinking about becoming builders. What I will put down here is much of what I will tell them. I hope it will be of interest and help to those about to build and sail a Spray, or more likely, those who will always just dream of doing it. I can assure you, those who are considering the task, that it is work and the road is long. But the undertaking is quite enjoyable if you are built for it, mentally more than physically. There is no question that those building a Spray now, 48 years after I built mine, will have to do many things differently. Things were changing all the time I was at it. That's the way the world is. For all of this changing, I would still consider building my boat of wood, iron, and canvas, using the methods always used to build wooden boats. I am sure that part of my small success was that I had a sound craft. There was no experimentation with her construction. Properly handled, the vessel could not fail. Her whole makeup has stood the test of time. It was up to those who manned her to make a go of it or not. Looking back at our life with Spray, we could have done better and maybe not enjoyed it so much. All things considered, we did not do badly. The vessel herself, I think she was plain majestic." R.D. Culler, Hyannis, Massachusetts. Introduction. Why did I build a replica of the Spray and determine to live my life afloat? I can't give a quick and easy answer to that any more than can those of the present generation considering a life afloat. Yes, of course, romance was a factor. I think little really nice and interesting activity is accomplished without some romance. A few other considerations were no doubt independence, far horizons, trafficking with the sea, a simple life, depending on one's own abilities, and many other small factors hard to define. Much of this could be found ashore, both in those days and now, for that matter. Some will now call it a challenge, and some present thinking says we need such an ideal. In the times of my experience, this word was not used in the sense of today's meaning, at least not where I grew up. I think I was mainly obeying the call of the sea, and man has been trying to explain this attraction since the beginning of seafaring. I can only add to past explanations by telling my story. If my readers find a little of this why in it, fine. If not, maybe I don't tell a good story or a good yarn. I think a lot of my attraction to life afloat was caused by the vessel herself, though I was very young when I started considering boat design. I was of the opinion that the spray model was very well suited to the sea. This was caused by the brashness of youth, no doubt, but considerable use of the spray and much subsequent experience in building and sailing other boats has not changed my opinion. From an early age, I was exposed to craft that would steer themselves, some better than others. Spray's ability to do this was one of the factors that convinced me to build her. Even those who are most rabidly opposed to the Spray's model must admit that for a boat to hold any course for long periods unattended is most useful. Among the usual run of craft, such a quality is quite rare. Now it might be said that self-steering can be accomplished today on any boat by mechanical wind vanes or other methods. This is possibly quite true most of the time, but the price is complexity. I believe that to be successful at sea, we must keep things simple. My many reasons will be given as we go along, but I will give one reason right now. Complexity means money, which is just as hard to come by in my days as it is now, maybe more so. Though banks lend people money to build boats now, such a practice was unheard of in my day. Boat building and sailing were considered very high-risk endeavors, and to my way of thinking still are. You can lose all in a week, insurance or no insurance. But it was not self-steering alone that led me to Spray. Another quality that attracted me to her was good capacity. She would make a comfortable home in any climate, could carry plenty of stores and tools, and had room enough for other uses. I realized then, as now, that sailing is not totally cheap and free. A living must be made, and there are not many ways to make a living and sail too. One way to make a living is to work at a trade here and there. It has to be here and there, or you won't do any sailing. The ship's right trade is a good one, as you need to know something of it anyway to acquire and maintain a vessel without having to rely on others more than you can afford. At the time I began, chartering offered some chance to make money. Though to charter was not unusual, it was not at all organized in those days. As it turned out for me, the Spray was a model that was quite well suited to chartering in many ways, and there were other trades. It sometimes pays to learn more than one trade. At least learn them well enough so you can hold a job at them if you must. I found that a man can nearly always find work anywhere if he's not too fussy. My dad always said that no matter what profession or other employment you might train for, always learn a trade too. It might come in handy. I still think this is very good advice. I never lacked work when I needed it, even in the Great Depression, because I was willing, if not always knowing. One thing I did was dig blue clay at 2 bits an hour on old drainer tides to put in a marine railway. And sometimes even at night, the tide is low in the dark too. No overtime, no fringe benefits. Here's a shovel, work if you want it. Pay in cash, no taxes. Terrible? Second-class citizen? Maybe. Wages were low, but a haircut was 2 bits. And there were 3 grades of coffee in the store at 15, 19, and 21 cents a pound. And once in a while, when a tough job was pulled off very well, we were treated to a slug of the local shine. Sometimes things were grim, and I would wonder if there would be much sailing ahead in the future. But the vessel was always kept up, and even the winter at near ready. Early chartering was extremely slow on account of the times, my lack of knowledge of how to go about things. The thing was that I stuck to it, possibly because I did not have enough sense enough to do otherwise. I long ago found that if you have something to offer, even though it is not very much, just as long as it's sound, and if you hang with it long enough, people will finally begin to notice. You will be on your way. The Spray and what I had done to her had something, and it was eventually noticed and used. I later had the satisfaction of seeing what had been ridicule in some quarters turned to envy. We even got so successful, in a very small way, that we were blackballed a couple of times, of which more later. I can't say that I took to the sea as a form of escape. I had nothing to escape from. You'll hear various people escaping from it all by going to sea, heading for the woods, or taking some other avenue to get away from the rat race, etc. I never felt that way, being the type who even now is satisfied with his lot. Once I was well established, I met many who thought it was a fine means of escape from something. I'm not sure from what. It has been my experience that if you escape from one thing, you become entrapped by another. As I think back, the only time I was unhappy about things for long periods was during the war years, and millions of others were too. Yet even in those times had some good points, if you can call anything about wartime good. Yes, I think it was just the sea calling, and there's no better time to heed its call than when you're young. Just how you do it will be very much based on the times you find yourself in. Looking back on it, trying to get a start in the famous Depression was not easy, though it did not seem hard at the time. Maybe it was the best time. There was nowhere else to go but up. Yes, do it young while you still have plenty of fire and strength, and get hot off the stove and quite able to cope with difficulty. Why does it matter, for instance, if you have a 30-hour stint, more or less on duty the whole time? You can take it. I think there's nothing sadder or more frustrating than a builder and a designer than to create a nice craft for someone in his 60s who's made his pile and can now afford the best and is full of the ailments of the age. The craft of his dreams is complicated and must have a hired skipper, and the owner never really gets to know her or gain real enjoyment from what he's quite able to afford. Maybe his position in life and how he hopes he looks in the eyes of his peers is worth it, but at the risk of a bad pun, I say he missed the boat. On the other hand, one who starts young and follows boats as a way of life always seems quite happy in his dotage. When such a person feels the weight of time, he knows full well he can't go aloft or tussle with the big mainsail or engage with all the other exciting things of his youth. He can do as I do, fool around the shore with some little boat. He will have wonderful memories to go with her. Why did I build a replica of the Spray and determine to live my life afloat? I'll let you draw your own conclusions. Chapter 2, Building the Spray. After I decided to build the Spray, some study was given to location for building, timber, and men skilled in constructing such a craft and in shipbuilding in general.